After the Wizards lost to the Celtics on Friday night, Washington officially has the worst record in the NBA at 2-12, and they're now on a 10-game losing streak. However, I don't think that the Wizards should really be concerned with how much they're losing. Everybody in the Wizards organization and fan base knew that there wasn't going to be very much winning this season, and that really the only goals for this season was for their young players to develop and to lose as many games as possible in order to get the best chance at getting Cooper Flagg, who looks like he could be the next face of American basketball. So the Wizards really shouldn't have a problem with how much they're losing. The real problem with the Wizards is that they aren't fully committing to their young core. In the first couple weeks of the season, the Wizards were looking like a feisty young team who showed a lot of promise. The young guys were getting in tons of experience and were doing a good job taking advantage of the opportunities they were afforded. Unfortunately, since then, some of the vets on the team have come back from injury and have retaken the reins, and the franchise is actually hurting because of it. In the first 5 or 6 games of the season, the Wizards had 3 of their young guys who were really showing a lot of potential and promise, those being Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, and Keyshawn George. Bilal Coulibaly has been one of the best defensive wings all year, including a game where he was the primary defender on Trae Young and held him to just 2 of 15 from the field and forced him into 6 turnovers. His length and fluidity have always made him a fantastic defender, and that would be something you could always rely on. But to start the year, it was looking like he could actually develop into quite a nice offensive player as well. In a 5-game span ranging from late October to early November, he had double-digit shot attempts in every game, and he averaged just a hair under 20 points per game. And he did it extremely efficiently on 55% shooting from the field, 44% from 3, and 83% from the free throw line. Maybe the most impressive part of the stretch was a 27-point performance in the Wizards' last win, where he shot 11 of 14 from the field and hit 3 of his 5 threes. Since that 5-game stretch, Bilal hasn't even had back-to-back games where he was able to record double-digit shot attempts, which is in large part due to Kyle Kuzma returning from injury and taking a lot of the team's shot opportunities. Since Kuzma came back from his injury, he's been taking nearly twice as many shot attempts per game as Bilal. I understand that the Wizards are allowing Kuzma to try and score as much as possible to try to raise his trade stock, but the opposite has happened so far this season. He's averaging 17 points per game, but he's been horrifically inefficient, shooting just 42% from the field, 29% from 3, and 67% from the line. And that's with just 2 assists per game and 3 turnovers per game. The Wizards really should have traded Kuzma at the deadline last year when his trade value was at the highest it's probably been in his career. But of course the Wizards sat on their hands as they do so often. And now it's hurting the development of a guy with an extremely bright future. Unfortunately, the same thing is happening at the point guard position as well. Bub Carrington started off the season as one of the most impressive rookies in the league, as he showed an ability to create shots both for himself and for others, and was a nice connective piece for the offense. He had an 8-game stretch where he averaged nearly 7 assists per game and averaged double-digit points. But much like Kyle Kuzma's return has hurt Bilal Coulibaly's offensive opportunities, Malcolm Brogdon's return has done the same to Bub. Brogdon returned immediately after that 8-game stretch for Bub, and with that, Bub's opportunities to handle the ball and create have been much more limited. Carrington has only managed to rack up 8 total assists in the 3 games since Brogdon's return. And it's a small sample size so far, but Brogdon has barely been more efficient than Carrington, so it's especially perplexing that you're giving Brogdon the starting job and limiting the reps that your promising rookie can get. Lastly, Keyshawn George has shown quite a bit of talent this year and has been a nice Swiss Army knife kind of guy who's shown he can do a little bit of everything. He had a sizable role in the offense and even had a 6-game stretch where he averaged 14 points per game on about league average true shooting percentage. Unfortunately, much like Bilal and Bub, Keyshawn has had his offensive opportunities slashed from the return of Malcolm Brogdon. Keyshawn has nearly been cut out of the offense entirely, as he has only managed to get 10 shots in 3 games since Brogdon's return from injury. The Wizards front office needs to move on from Kuzma and Brogdon as soon as possible. They should have tried to find a trade to move him to a playoff team in need of a bench guard and gotten something back in return while also ensuring as many opportunities for their young guys as they could. Kuzma should have either been traded last deadline or in the offseason once he had one less year on his contract. Unlike Jordan Poole, who is still young enough to fit this timeline that the Wizards are going for, it doesn't really make any sense for either of these vets to stay on the team. They don't really seem to be locker room leaders, at least not as much as Jordan Poole has shown to be, and this season was always going to be about tanking and getting their young guys as many reps as possible, so it really makes no sense to keep these two old vets around. All they're doing is taking scoring and playmaking chances away from those who are a definitive part of the long-term outlook for the organization. It's especially baffling because the worst thing that could come out of these two being traded away is that the team gets worse. But that would be great for the Wizards. The more games you lose, the better odds you have of landing the number 1 overall pick and what looks to be a surefire superstar in Cooper Flagg. And even if you don't get the rights to the number 1 pick, you're just ensuring that you have better odds at getting a very high pick in the draft that's supposed to be a very talented one. The sooner the front office commits to their young core, the better off they will be. Hopefully they come to that realization as soon as possible.